If you're surprised by the length of this video, I would like to remind you that my recap and review of the season finale of Hashira Training was just under an hour. So of course this one is longer. I like to yap. What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel and to my long-awaited full review of the new Demon Slayer Infinity Castle movie. So right off the bat, I'm going to throw out there that this is a spoiler review. I will be touching on lots and lots of spoilers from the movie, so if you have not seen it yet and you do not want to know what happens, this is not the video for you. Put a pin in it and come back to it after you go watch the movie and go watch the movie. Like, what are you even doing if you haven't seen it yet? And in this review, I'm gonna be talking just about it and talking about my favorite moments, talking about all the stuff that I can think of because I've seen it 6 times. Yes, I'm crazy. And I really want to put a disclaimer out there. This is just gonna be me yapping. I didn't write down notes. I can't review the movie in front of me. I would have to go and watch it again if I forget something, so I'm just going to talk through it. I'm also going to talk about some of the moments from the manga that they cut out or moments that they added in. So anyway, welcome to my super long yap session about the Demon Slayer Infinity Castle movie. Let's get into it. But before we dive in, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment your thoughts. And can I just say, what an amazing job they did. Are there things that they took out that I maybe question a little bit? Yes, I'll talk about that when it gets to that point in me kind of talking through the movie. But as a manga reader, it can be a little bit scary when you head into a movie or the TV seasons knowing the material but not knowing how it's going to be adapted. I feel like growing up in a world where I had Harry Potter, I had the Chronicles of Narnia, I had Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, all of these big movie series that are based off of books. And the most common issue with all of those was that they really took a lot of liberties. And while these were adaptations of those books, they would cut out important things, they would add stupid things, and there was always discourse regarding the adaptation because it never was a good adaptation. Most people would agree that movies took too many liberties and it just became a completely different story. When it comes to Demon Slayer, and I think this is just different for anime as a whole, because anime is based off of manga, which are comics, they do a really good job at just following the source material. And with Ufotable, they actually add quite a lot of small moments here and there to give it a little bit more oomph, but they don't change the source material. So the first thing I just want to call out is the fact that in the manga, it is the exact same pacing. We are going back and forth from this battle, and then the next battle, and then the next battle, and each battle has backstory intertwined. I would argue that it's supposed to make you feel like it kind of takes you out of the battle because the whole point is that we are experiencing these memories and these histories with the characters as they fight these demons, because every single main fight in this movie is a personal one to the person that is fighting the demon. Shinobu versus Doma. Doma killed her sister. Zenitsu versus Kaigaku. Kaigaku was his aniki, his big brother. Like, he considered him a big brother to him. He's not related by blood, he's not his actual brother, but he considers him a brother. And then, of course, with Tanjiro and Giyu versus Akaza, there is the history of Tanjiro being there when Rengoku died from Akaza, and Giyu probably has some emotions. It seems as if he did like Rengoku. Rengoku was probably one of the only ones that was actually nice to him. So there's emotional driven moments in every single fight, and because these are such emotionally driven fights, these characters are experiencing these memories as they fight them. We're seeing it in real time. We are seeing their thoughts and their emotions and their memories real time, and I like how they did that. So they did a really good job, in my opinion, of translating it from manga to anime. The only thing that is kind of an issue is when it comes to anime, and this is more of an anime issue, not a specifically Demon Slayer issue, is when you watch it in anime, you are subject to however long they take to get through the dialogue. When you read it in manga, it's just subject to how long it takes you to read the dialogue. So it can seem like these characters are talking and talking and talking and talking, And it is a very dialogue heavy show. I will say that, like, Demon Slayer has a lot of dialogue. The characters usually repeat the same information multiple times. They've done that from the start. Again, I remind people, if you don't like that, I don't understand why you watch Demon Slayer or a lot of animes in general, because most of these animes have a lot of dialogue that repeats information. Anyway, you are subject to now having to witness the dialogue as the anime gives it to you, rather than just read it and be done. I just want to start by saying they do a really good job. The things that they add are very small moments. It's not like Hashira Training, where more than 80% of that season was anime original content just so they could make it a season. They did cut out a couple moments that I found important, which again, I'll talk about in a moment. But for the most part, it is pretty much page for page when it comes to the adaptation. So I didn't mind any of the pacing or any of that because, one, I know that it's the first one of 3 and we probably won't really understand the pacing until we see all 3 together. That's like judging one episode's pacing without seeing the rest. I remember people doing that with like episode 7, I think it was, of Swords and Village. People were complaining about the pacing of that particular episode because it got a lot of dialogue in. But then when you watch it as a part of the entire season, it just makes more sense. So anyway, if you're new here and you haven't clicked off yet because I'm a yapper, I'm in it because I love talking about anime and specifically love talking about Demon Slayer, obviously. So welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy it. But now that we got that out of the way, let's just kind of take it from the top all the way through to the end from what I can remember. Again, I've seen this movie 6 times, but I might forget timing of things or might forget a few scenes if I didn't find them that important. So I want to first just talk about the entrance of all the characters into the Infinity Castle and the start of them fighting all of these random demons. First things first, I talked about this in one video, I just really have to hone in. The sequence of events where we're seeing all of these characters falling through while the MA song is playing was all anime original content. In the manga, it stays on Tanjiro the entire time while he goes through that dialogue where he's questioning, like, what is this place? Is it a blood demon art? And then he starts to realize that he needs to land because he can see the bottom. He knows that he will die if he hits the bottom. But us seeing all the characters, Obanai reaching for Mitsuru as she's screaming, Sanmi falling through, Shinobu falling through, all of that was anime original, along with the way Giyu saved Tanjiro. In the manga, Giyu did save Tanjiro, but it went from Tanjiro realizing he was struggling to grab on to Giyu grabbing his Howdy. In the anime, we got this beautiful, majestic sequence of Giyu beelining for Tanjiro, using water breathing to stabilize him. He grabs onto him, he throws him on the platform, Tanjiro breaks through the railing, and then Giyu grabs his Howdy. It's moments like that where they added it. I really like when they do that, because to me, they're really honing in on the dynamic of these characters. That's very important for the rest of this entire series, and the dynamic between Tanjiro and Giyu is very important to the story all the way until the end, and it also happens to be my favorite dynamic in the entire show. So if they add a little bit to it and they show just how much Giyu wants to protect him and how hyper-focused he is on making sure Tanjiro stays safe, I love that, because they added the line at the end of Hashira Training where the first thing Giyu can think about as they start to fall is to check on Tanjiro. You know, in the Hashira Training season finale, it opens, it shows everyone falling, and everyone's kind of falling, and it seems like they're kind of focused mostly on themselves. Gyomei's definitely focused on Muichiro, which I love that too, because you got the oldest and the youngest Hashira, so Gyomei, of course, is gonna want to, you know, keep track of him. But they have Giyu fall, and instantly he's yelling for Tanjiro because he doesn't care about anything else. He's made up his mind that if he's gonna do one thing, it's going to be fulfilling his wish of being able to protect people, and he's put all of that into Tanjiro. Like, he wants to protect Tanjiro with his life. So they're really honing in on that, which I think is good, because I think that their dynamic is so important to the rest of the story, but it's been important from the start because Giyu was the character that saved Tanjiro and Nezuko at the very beginning. He is the one who has always been in their corner. All of the other Hashira, including Rengoku, were down to kill him the moment they met him and his sister and the situation. Gyu's the only one who, yes, he briefly thought it, but as soon as he saw what was happening, he chose to save them. The other Hashira, they get this evidence, they get this letter, and they still are nervous about it, which you can't blame them. I'm gonna make a video about that at some point because I actually have a lot of thoughts on that. I really like that Ufotable has chosen to hone in on Gyu really wanting to protect Tanjiro, because I think that calls all the way to the beginning of the show and it makes it feel even more full circle than it does in the manga. So great job on their part. The very beginning, Gyome walking around the cemetery, that was all anime original content as well. That's not in the manga. And I really liked that they also showed that because it kind of showed what Gyome was doing as he was waiting. Just seeing that perspective of Gyome kind of waiting and seeing that he's at the cemetery and definitely reflecting on what's about to happen and knows that this day like could very well be the end for him and all of them, because the battle that is looming is the battle against Muzan, and Muzan is insanely strong. He is the progenitor of all demons. So they really did a good job with very little dialogue, and it was recap, but we saw it from a different perspective, and I really like that they did that, because while we did get recap to remind us a little bit about what happened in the season before, they still like made new animation for it so that it was still a different perspective, and I really liked that they did that. So side note for that. Outside of that, this opening sequence just did a very good job at setting the tone. The music before the MA song started and the MA song was very urgent. You know, you could sense the urgency and the almost not hopelessness, but kind of hopelessness as you think about the fact that we are falling into this demon lair and we are coming into the final battle. Like, it feels very final. It feels like the start of something important. And as a manga reader, I obviously know that this is very, very important, and they're making it kind of obvious, but they do a good job at making sure we understand as an audience that this is a big deal. And with the music and them just expanding upon all the characters falling through, seeing Gyome smash against a wall and all of the demons coming up on them in Muichiro, seeing Obanai reaching for Mitsuri and being the one who can kind of calm her down, seeing Shinobu fall through, but she's very calm, seeing Zenitsu, like all of it was just really well done. And this is, you know, the first minute and a half of the movie, truly, because once we see Gyu save Tanjiro, we spend a little bit of time with them, and I'm not gonna lie, hearing them both say Mizu no Kokyu at the same time, that brought me like so much satisfaction. I don't know how to explain it, but having them both go Mizu no Kokyu, and then Tanjiro says his form, and then Gyu says his form, and they're doing water breathing together as a team, which we've never gotten to see them do yet, even though they both are very skilled. Like, Gyu is, of course, the best at water breathing of the current generation, if not of anyone, because he's created his own. And Tanjiro is very skilled at water breathing as well, and they were trained under the same trainer, and it was just like, the water bros. That's what I call them. That's what a lot of people call them, the water bros. So it was really fun to see them both use water breathing and hear them both say Mizu no Kokyu at the same time. That whole sequence also they expanded upon from the manga. In the manga, you just kind of saw them do one slash, but in the anime, you're seeing them like do it all together, and it was beautiful and stunning. And the animation continued to be stunning as we saw Obanai fight all of those demons for Mitsuri. I would really, really like, because I think we pretty much saw the breathing style of every single demon slayer except for Mitsuri. And this is something that I just genuinely have had an issue with for a while. In Swordsmith Village, which was the arc that she really got introduced, she got far less screen time than Muichiro, and this is not just a manga issue or just an anime issue, it is a both issue. She gets way less time in Swordsmith Village when that's like her arc to get time. Muichiro gets way more, right? And then in the Hashira training arc, they add all of these anime original episodes. The episode with Muichiro, anime original. The episode with Tengen, anime original. And then we get to Mitsuri, and we don't get pretty much any anime original content. And then we get to the movie, and we get to see all this anime original content of every single Slayer using their breathing forms, except for Mitsuri. We don't see love breathing at all. It's just like a little pet peeve of mine, because I love Mitsuri, but I also just don't understand why she continues to get the short end of the stick when I think she's such a good character with such a beautiful breathing form. my own opinion is maybe it's just that hard to animate. Like, it just could be that hard to animate, but I digress. That's like one very small critique. If you're gonna show the breathing forms of every character there, including Murata, like we see later on, why not let Mitsuri at least once use love breathing? I wish that since all of the characters got these little extra moments of using their breathing styles against these random demons, I wish that Mitsuri got the same at a later time. But they did add her sword in a heart as she ran away, which was so freaking cute. Even my husband was like, look, her sword's in a heart. I'm like, yeah, it's so cute. And then we moved on to Muichiro and Gyomei, who are, of course, talking about the master. This was pretty much word for word for the manga. This is just such a fun side note. Again, I'm yapping. I'm gonna stop apologizing now, but I'm truly gonna call out some of the randomest stuff because that's how my brain works. I thought it was so hilarious when they were showing the master kind of sit next to Muichiro, and then it does show the master with Tanjiro when he was in a coma after Entertainment District in the manga. Like, that's not an anime original scene, but in the manga it says, after a demon attack took me down, I was lingering on the border between life and death. He stayed by me the whole time. He did the same for other core members who nearly died like a father. That's what he says when the drawing is Kagaya by Tanjiro when he was in a coma. But in the movie, and this is probably just a translation thing, he says he did the same thing. He stayed by their side in their final moments while Tanjiro was on the screen. And it made me laugh because it made it look like Tanjiro was in his final moments. Yes, he was lingering between life and death when he was in a coma, but it was just funny. The translation was kind of silly because it just made it look like he was sitting by him as Tanjiro died, but Tanjiro is alive and well currently. So, anyway, really random side tangent, made me laugh. But overall, we're gonna get into now the first big battle. I just wanna say that first, I think it was like 5 to 10-ish minutes of just checking in with all the Slayers. It was intermittent anime original content, but the manga does touch on every single character. It's just they kind of expand each moment, and a lot of them in the manga, we don't see them use their breathing styles, but in the anime, all of them did, again, except for, well, Genya doesn't have a breathing style. He has America breathing. And then Mitsuri. So most of that was just, it was in the manga, but expanded, essentially. Now let's talk about the Shinobu versus Doma fight. I'm not going to talk a ton yet about how they adapted it because I just want to give my thoughts first. A lot of you have been waiting for this because I've been talking a lot about Tanjiro and Gyu versus Akaza. I did warn everyone that that's my favorite fight in the entire series, so my brain does tend to lean towards wanting to talk about that just because it is the main battle of the movie. I mean, the movie's actual name is Akaza Sairai, which means Akaza Returns. I don't know why they didn't call Akaza Returns in English. It's just called Infinity Castle. And I feel like maybe if they had done that, people would have been more aware that there was going to be Akaza was going to be kind of the main character of the movie, but I digress. We'll talk about that fight in a little while. So, Shinobu versus Doma. Shinobu versus Doma is the one that I'm seeing the most talked about by just random YouTubers about it being the weakest. And I have some thoughts. Do I somewhat agree with that? Yes. However, I do want to call out that they did it beautifully, but I think a lot of people are missing the fact that this is just the start of this fight, because this is the one fight in this movie that does not get closure. We get a little bit of closure for Shinobu, but we don't get closure for the fight itself. Because this one, and this is split up the same way in the manga, we get this quick little moment and then Shinobu dies, and then we go to Zenitsu, we go to Tanjiro and Gyu. We don't revisit the Doma fight until after Akaza dies. So that is correct. Again, they are doing it the way it's set up in the manga. Most of the fights, once you're there, you stay there, but this is like the only one that really gets split up. And they just chose to do it that way because they chose to do it that way. And that's fine. I don't really have an opinion on if that makes the final arc feel disjointed or anything. I never felt like it did. It just was how they chose to do it. And I think they chose to do it because they wanted to have one battle, have a little bit more of that like question mark where we had to kind of wait and see what was gonna happen. Was it quick? Yes, it was over very quickly. And Shinobu only got, I think, think it was 3 or 4 big like fight moments. Otherwise there was a lot of dialogue and there was backstory. I think the only one during this fight that kind of to me felt a little bit out of place, which again, it wasn't that Ufotable did this, it's the way it is in the manga, when Doma kind of went through his backstory. And the only reason I was like kind of about that one particular moment is because the action that happened right before that was so satisfying for all of my senses, because they were like fighting in beat with the background music. But it only lasted like 5 seconds before he started talking. So that's the only reason for me that moment was kind of like, it was because I was sitting there in my seat and I'm like, oh, this is really satisfying for them to be like on the beat of the music. And then Doma started talking and I was like, I also don't care about Doma. I'm gonna just throw out there, I find his character fun, kind of, and I find him like interesting, I guess, but I don't really like him. So that's just my prerogative, okay? So I also didn't really care about him explaining his past. He's literally like, yeah, all these people were just worshiping me. So anyway. But, you know, it has to happen somewhere, and that's how it happens in the manga. Now, for those of you who are commenting on it being short, it is meant to be short. And I have something to say about both this fight and the Zenitsu fight. They are meant to be short. Shinobu, unfortunately, could not stand a chance against Doma, and it is over very quickly for her, because with her inability to behead demons and her poison being broken down by Doma, there's just not much opportunity for her to last very long, because she doesn't have the strength to back up anything. So she's very fast, and she does do a good job, and there is more to come with her. I'm not gonna say what. Her story is not technically over. We'll just say that, even though she is now dead. Rip Shinobu. But it is supposed to be fast, and we're not supposed to have time to mourn her death, because we will later, but we are also in a war, so we have to move on. Like, the point of her death, maybe you can argue that it's too bad that Shinobu is kind of more of a plot device than anything else. I feel like when it comes to her, she does have this backstory, and I did feel like her backstory within this fight were very emotional, with her sister. You know, the first one is when she remembers finding her sister. Then the next one is when she remembers their parents getting killed and the promise that they made. She sees her sister when she's been cut and she's bleeding out. You know, these are all very emotional moments. It is very quick. She doesn't get as much time with backstory as a lot of the other characters, unfortunately. And I think it is because, and I've talked about this with Shinobu, I really love her. I think she's more relevant to the plot than she is a developed character, in my opinion. She's one of the ones where like I said, her story's not over, because she is gonna have something to do with the rest of this story, really. She's gonna kind of haunt the plot until the very end, but she seems to me a bit more of a plot device, I guess you could say. Every story has to have characters who are plot devices. There are just some characters that are not going to get the development of everyone else. They are going to be there to really move the plot forward. And I felt like with her death, and I've always felt this way, but it felt very obvious within the movie, was her death is kind of the catalyst of telling us as an audience that we need to take this final battle seriously. Because we haven't lost anyone outside of Kaguya, which most people don't really care about him, right? But we haven't lost anyone outside of him and his wife Amane and their 2 kids since Rengoku. So people start to kind of feel like maybe this is a story where people aren't gonna die, or very few people are gonna die. So I feel like her dying so early on and it being so quick like that is the author telling us, hey, buckle up. And her death is a bit more shocking to me than it is emotional. I did not cry once. All 6 times that I went to this movie, I did not cry. And it's not because I dislike her character. She's not one of my favorite Hashira, but I think I have her like 5th or 6th right now. Like, there's definitely some that I don't like as much as her. My problem is that I do think she is the plot device character and less of a character, because so many of the characters get a lot of backstory, even the demons. Like, obviously Akaza's backstory is way longer than hers, because Akaza gets like that character development. Shinobu gets plot development. That's kind of how I see it. And it's not really a complaint. I think it's more of a preference thing, and it's more of just that you have to understand that in every story, some characters are just going to be plot devices more than they are going to be their own character. And I feel like Shinobu kind of is more of she helps other characters and she helps the plot, but we don't ever really get to understand fully her. That being said, I did really like this fight. It is the only one where I felt like some of the backstory moments were a little bit herky-jerky, like I already talked about, really just with Doma. All of Shinobu's moments were beautifully done, and I feel like for the most part, it was very intertwined and well done. But I felt like, first of all, the music was stunning. The OST of this movie was better than I really expected it to be. It was so good. I've joked that I want to inject it into my bloodstream because I love the music that much. And her like little just in the background, like I said, sometimes they were even fighting on beat of that, was so good. And I did love to see her different breathing forms. I forgot that we didn't even get to see Butterfly Dance, so we only really got to see Butterfly Dance once and all the way back in season 1. But they did a really good job at animating it. I think this one just had the most stagnant moments too, like when Doma uses his blood demon art the first time. It's a beautiful frame, but it's a little bit more still, which I don't really mind. I felt like the emotions and the way they did like her actual death was really good with the piano and her being angry. I've already mentioned this, but her voice acting, her Japanese voice actor was the best in the movie, in my opinion, which is saying a lot because I am a Hanai-san fangirl who's the voice actor for Tanjiro, and he also did a fantastic job, which I'll talk about in a little while. But Shinobu's voice actor just took it up so many levels that I was just sitting there like, wow, like she sounds so different, but she still sounds like Shinobu. And just the emotions of her confronting the demon who killed her sister, and she has all these emotions and she has all this anger, but we've only seen her act all happy and smiley all the time, except for that one moment in Hashira training. The switch, it was so natural, and I think that's partially because of her voice actor just performing it so well. Like I've said it before, I'll say it again, nominate her for an Oscar. Like I don't care, the Oscars are supposed to be for Hollywood. If the movie's getting nominated, she should get nominated too. It was really, really stunning. No, I did not cry. Side note, something that you don't catch on to in the manga is the fact that as Doma started to absorb her, it was like he broke her neck. There was a crack and then her head went limp and then her sword fell out of her hand. In the manga, which by the way, volume 16 ended on her big thrust into the ceiling, which also I will remind you all, like just to show you how Ufotable does the animation for the fight sequences is always so amazing, because here is her saying that final breathing form. We just have these pages and that's all there is of that one final move from her. While in the anime, like they added all of these different moments where you can see her face kind of in front of him because she's moving so quickly. And that's just one of the things that I really like about the anime, is that all the fight sequences just get a little bit extra so we get a full understanding of what's happening, and I really, really like that. But yeah, this is where the volume 16 ends. That's the end of chapter 142. And then by the end of 143, she's dead. So it says crack, but I feel like when you read it in the manga, you sometimes kind of miss what that means. But then when you witness it in the anime and it was like crack, head goes limp, sword falls out, I was like, oh, did he just break her neck? That's great. That's great. So overall, that first fight sequence, while I do argue that yes, it was the weakest of the three, I feel like it's not even necessarily that it got less effort. I think it's just an issue of that fight isn't over yet, so we still have more to go, and that part is supposed to be quick because it's really there as a plot for, hey, pay attention. We're in a final war and people are not safe. because Shinobu has been a prevalent character for a very long time. For me, I give the Shinobu versus Doma fight a 8 out of 10 because it just was the one fight where I found myself a little bit just kind of like ready to move on to the next thing. Not because I don't like it, but because I'm more interested in the second part of the fight, because I do like Kanao better as a character, and there will be one more character involved with that fight who also has emotional ties to the character. I'm not going to say who, but I like that character better than Shinobu as well. So I don't want to make this seem like I'm putting things down because I'm not. I think just more in my world of what I like out of Demon Slayer, this one just had the least amount of that, but they still did a very good job. The animation was stunning, the music was stunning, the voice acting was probably the best of the movie. So I'm gonna give it credit where credit is due. But I think from the start, because I'm doing this in a very biased way, it was going to be lower ranked for me because I like Shinobu. I don't like how this fight ends for her. Obviously, I don't like that she dies. So, but they did a good job. I've not cried once over her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the people who love her. I don't know. It's just more shock factor than anything else. So that fight was very well done. I'm already at 40 minutes. I feel like I'm not doing the fight justice because I really did enjoy it. The fight was very good. The animation was good. The music was good. The fight choreography was good. The backstory makes sense. I think we're supposed to be kind of taken out of the fight. I think that's the point of the writing, because I will remind everyone that the original source material, Demon Slayer, is not about the battles. It's not about the power structure. It's not about the fighting. It is about the human will, and it is about the characters. It is a very character-driven show, and the only reason that people love it for its fight sequences is because of how Ufotable has adapted it. So remember that when you're watching it, that the point of the story is not the action sequences. The point of the story are the characters. So I think when you can think of it that way, you are reminded that we are supposed to be following along with the characters' emotions. And because their emotions are kind of getting in the way of the fight, because they're being reminded of their past when they're facing a foe that has such emotional ties to them, we have to kind of be taken out of the fight with them as they talk. But Doma's backstory is just kind of blah to me. So that's the only one where I was like, I kind of don't care about you. Can we move on? So again, this is kind of preference. So I'm not going to be as harsh. I'm going to give the Shinobu versus Doma fight an 8.5 out of 10 because I don't really have anything wrong with it. It's just not my favorite part of the movie, and it just kind of falls into the shadows of the other two fights based off of my preference. Not because they did a bad job with it, but because just based out of my preferences, I didn't care as much about it. I love Shinobu, I do. It just meh. So, moving on. I also just need to shout out Kanao's voice actor because she's not even been in the anime that much, and then you add to it that she doesn't talk. She's barely had any lines. So for her to come in and let out that huge scream gave me chills as well. Both of these voice actors absolutely slayed. All the voice actors slayed, I will say. Absolutely. I've said it before, I'll say it again. One of Demon Slayer's biggest strengths is its voice acting cast in sub. The Japanese voice acting cast of Demon Slayer is just, they are perfect for their roles. They are all just such talented voice actors. It's insane. So fun fact, the manga has an outside narrator, and whenever these speech boxes are squares and not the circle that has the little speech indent, that's an outside narrator. That's not actually a person in the story. Ufotable, for whatever reason, decided to not use an outside narrator. I think they could have done Urokodaki. He would have probably been a fairly good narrator, especially since that voice actor narrates other stories. He literally is kind of known for being a voice acting narrator anyway. So they gave these lines to Zenitsu. I think that was a good choice. I don't think it would have made a whole lot of sense for Kanao to be saying these lines because she just had this huge moment of absolute anger and emotions because she just witnessed her master die in front of her, so she's very angry. I don't think it would have made sense to have her let out that scream, say her breathing form. It shows her face and she's got veins popping, and then for her to just suddenly say, somehow I feel the people I care about and the most important to me will still be alive tomorrow. It made sense that Zenitsu was the one saying it, and I felt like the way that they kind of transition this in the movie was really good. I know people were complaining that it was like Shinobu died and then move on. Again, I think you're supposed to feel that way. I think that's the narrative of the story, but also it made it like I kind of got a little bit in my seat, like, ooh, okay, like I'm getting chills. Here we go. Like we're moving on. We're going to Zenitsu's fight. Like this is a big deal. And then we get to Zenitsu versus Kaigaku. Now, before we get into the Zenitsu versus Kaigaku fight, let's talk about what happens before. So we then see Tanjiro fall through because they're trying to separate Tanjiro and Giyu. And in the manga, he just kind of comes back. Like no. In the manga, so he just grabs on as he falls and just jumps back up. But of course, in the anime, he did, I think it was 8th form of water breathing till he get back. So they're just, flexing the breathing styles a little bit. And then they announce that Shinobu is dead. I wanted to take a moment to say this. This is already a super long video, so we might as well just make it longer. I'm seeing a lot of discourse about the flashbacks and whose memory was what. There are people saying that all of those memories of Shinobu, we saw her just kind of with Kanao and the butterfly triplets, and then we see her smile, like a real genuine smile that wasn't the fake thing that she was doing throughout the story. And a lot of people are trying to argue those were all Giyu or those were all Tanjiro. I think it was both of them. So in the anime, they kind of really honed in on Tanjiro, but in the manga right before the memories, so this is them telling them that Shinobu is dead, they show both Giyu and Tanjiro at like equal boxes, right? So it's like clearly both of their reactions. We then get Shinobu smiling, we then get her with the butterfly triplets and Kanao, and then it goes to Tanjiro crying. So personally, I think this is Giyu's memory. This is Tanjiro's memory. Because then it focuses on him. And it would make the most sense because Tanjiro's memories with Shinobu more involve everyone there who was taking care of him whenever he was injured. Giyu is going to have more memories of her on missions alone. So I think that it definitely is both of them, and that's my opinion on that. Keep in mind, people are arguing that it says somewhere in like a fan book that it was just Giyu's memories. I saw a screenshot, I'll put it right here, of the translation because it's in one of the fan books that hasn't been officially translated. And the Google Translate is just really horrible and it's missing. I can tell you, as someone who can read some Japanese, that it says Tanjiro's memories and Giyu's memories. It does not just say Giyu's memories. So, debunked. All right, it says Tanjiro no, comma, Giyu no. The no marks possession, so it's saying Tanjiro no, like Tanjiro's and Giyu's memories. That's what it's saying. Don't trust Google Translate ever. It's horrible. We then go to meeting Kiriya, who is now revealed as a boy. We've only seen him as a girl throughout the story so far. As a reminder, the Ubuyashiki family had 5 kids, of course, so we're just being they're letting us know that only 2 died, 3 are still alive, and 1 of them is a boy, and it is Kiriya. He is now the master of the Demon Slayer Corps. He is only 8 years old. That's something that they did not say in the anime, but it is stated in the manga. It says, Kiriya Ubuyashiki, at 8, the current lord of House Ubuyashiki, the eldest son of the Ubuyashiki family. Again, these are in boxes, so it's being narrated a lot of times because Ufotable decided to take the outside narrator out. Those lines are either given to characters or just cut. So sometimes I feel like they do remove important information because they do cut some lines that I think are somewhat important. I think this is good to give us context, but is it that important that we know that Kiriya was 8 years old? Within the context of the story, no. So they cut it out. They also gave the names of his 2 sisters, Kuina and Kanata, and those are the 3 that survive. Fun fact, the first few times I watched this movie, I recognized Kiriya's voice and I could not put my finger on who it was. Again, this is Japanese. I don't watch Demon Slayer dub. I'm sorry if you watch it dubbed. I can't do it. The voice actor for Kiriya is Aoyuki, who voices Mao Mao in the Apothecary Diaries. That's why I recognized it. I was just going over like male voice actors in my head and didn't think about the fact that they would have a girl do it. Yeah, so that's kind of fun because I've gotten to say hello to her. I was at a panel with her for the Apothecary Diaries. I was cosplaying Mao Mao. They invited cosplayers to the front of the stage, and I literally got to say like, konnichiwa, and she like waved at me and went kawaii, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna freak out. Anyway, so that's a fun fact. So there is a page here that is cut, so I'll go ahead and read this because this is like interesting information, but I think they just cut it because isn't that prevalent to the plot? No. It starts by just introducing Kiriya, that he's 8, that he's in charge, who the sisters are, and then it says, his older sisters' names were Hinaki and Nichika. Like their mother, neither left their father's side, which is probably why they chose to sacrifice themselves with their father when they're daughters, so they are not subject to the curse. They would live a long life if they chose to. They're also only 8 years old because I'm fairly certain it's revealed somewhere, I don't know exactly where, that these are quintuplets? What would 5 be? Like 5 people born at the same time. So they're all technically the same age, but they are calling them their older and younger siblings, so maybe not. Okay, so his older sisters' names were Hinaki and Nichika. Like their mother, neither ever left their father's side. Their father was strict. He knew he would not live long, so he had to raise his children to adulthood quickly. Their mother, who was similarly strict but kind, is already gone, so Kiriya must take his father's place and become the father to the child warriors of the Demon Slayer Corps. I call this out in this video because I feel like this, I'm 50-50 on whether or not they should have included it. I think it would have just given people a little bit more context to who Kiriya is. But that being said, it kind of talks about it. There is still a lot of anime original dialogue in it because from here, interesting. Okay. See, this is what happens when I kind of read through this for the first time with you guys. So this is just a conversation. This is what this review is turning into. I don't even know if I can call this a review at this point. This is a chat. This is a yap. So we have little information. Order the crows to spread as many of the eyes as possible. Muzan's location hasn't changed. Interesting. In the anime, they make it very clear that they don't know where Muzan is. Like, they cannot find him. He's hiding somewhere that we don't know. But according to this one panel, in the manga, they did know where he was. It was just trying to get to him was difficult, I guess. So just a fun fact. They kind of changed that, I guess. They did add, like, most of the scenes with Muzan were anime original, so it's possible that they're just kind of changing it to they don't know where he is rather than it's just hard to get there. I guess it adds a little bit more urgency to the situation that they have to try and find him. But fun fact, you found that out with me in real time because it's been a while since I read this. Muzan's location hasn't changed. At present, everyone is far away. Lead them north. So they know where he is. But they didn't know where he was in the anime. So interesting. The ones confronting the Kizuki are Kanao and Agatsuma. So I believe this is the point in the time where the movie where Kiriya kind of explains that using the blood demon art of Yushiro, they can see all of the demons because they're like glowing red. And then the upper moons have like all of this energy around them. So they're like very large and you can tell that they are the upper moons. So that was anime original and I liked that. The other anime original moment is in the anime, they added the lore that Zenitsu is ranked Hinoe. So fun fact, after we find out their rank in Entertainment District when Inosuke and Tanjiro talk about it, the manga never mentions their rank again. So we never know what rank they are going into this battle at all. So it was interesting that they added that. I'm actually going to make a video. I've made a short about it, by the way. If you watch my shorts, scroll down a little bit. I kind of talked about this in one of my shorts, but I'm going to make a whole video about the ranking and everything because I find that to be very interesting. So yeah, that was just like a little thing that they added, and I liked that. I liked that they added that lore drop that Zenitsu is currently ranked Hinoe, which is, I believe above that is just above that is Kinoto, Kinoe, then Hashira. So you can assume that Tanjiro and Inosuke are at least that rank. I know there's also information in the core records book. I don't really believe it and I have thoughts. Again, I'm gonna make a video about it. But so they just called him a Hinoe. And then we get to Zenitsu versus Kaigaku. Okay, so let's chat about that. We are an hour in. So Zenitsu versus Kaigaku, kind of getting the same kind of complaints that Shinobu versus Doma got from the public. This was definitely my second favorite fight. I definitely liked it better than Shinobu versus Doma. I think it gave me some more chill-worthy moments, and it also did make me cry. It also layered backstory just the way the manga does. They added quite a lot, so keep in mind that this fight is only 1 chapter? 2 chapters maybe? I think they did add some dialogue, but I can't really remember it off the top of my head. So it starts in 144, and by the end of 145, they're both falling after Zenitsu beheaded him. So it's a lot faster in the manga. They definitely added, I think, some time to the backstory, and that's something that was different about this one compared to Shinobu versus Doma. In Shinobu versus Doma, I feel like with the backstory, they really just did like manga pages. Like it was truly just what was seen in the manga. When usually with backstory, they do add quite a lot of anime original like dialogue and maybe a couple moments here and there. So that was something that was kind of different. But okay, I keep saying I'm just going to talk about it before I talk about the manga. Overall, I really liked Zenitsu versus Kaigaku. I think that the animation for it was very, very good. And I think that the voice acting for it was very, very good. I do want to call out that the range of Zenitsu's voice actor, Hiro Shimono, he is incredible. And I already kind of knew that he had this range because he's Dobby in My Hero Academia. And if you don't know who that is, it's a villain. And he speaks very low and very kind of like sultry. Like a lot of the girls in the My Hero Academia fandom are like, oh my gosh, Dobby, he's so hot. I don't agree. I don't. Anyway, that's a side tangent for another day. So I already knew that he was capable of doing this voice acting, but it is still a very important moment for Zenitsu. Now, again, if you've been watching me for a while, you know I have my misgivings about Zenitsu. Some of you try to correct me. I stand by what I say because it's a preference thing. It's not an issue with the writing. It's not an issue with anything. I preference-wise don't like Zenitsu as much as the other members of the Kamaboko squad. So obviously, you know, the voice acting is really interesting to me because Zenitsu was like a different person in this fight. He is locked in. He is serious. He is angry, he is sad, like there are so many things happening to him in this moment. So I do understand like why he's kind of been the way he's been. It's so that this moment feels much bigger because Zenitsu's always been such a silly character who just screams and yells and only locks in when he's asleep and that sort of thing. So to see him lock in when he's awake and be so angry and so quiet, but also yell, but in a very different way, it's not lost on me how important that is to his character, and I really, really like that about this moment with him. I like that he gets serious. I like that we see him just be so angry and so locked in even though he's awake. It's a big character development moment, and I like that we have to kind of walk through this character who has been introduced since season 1. I don't think Kaigaku's character came out of nowhere. I don't think the author just randomly decided to write it in this way. I think they've been planning it out since the beginning because Kaigaku did first appear in season 1 and they specifically didn't show his face, which tells me that they were trying to tell us like, hey, pay attention to who this is, but you don't get to see who it is yet because they'll have a big part in the show later on, which he does, right? Fun fact, in case you missed it, Kaigaku was also in Gyomei's backstory. He was the orphan that brought the demon to his shrine and ended up killing all of the kids. So Kaigaku is a fantastic character who ruins 2 people's backstory. We love him for that, hate him for that. I'm actually going to make a video about Kaigaku because I have thoughts on his character that's very interesting. I find him interesting, I'll just say that. Yeah, this fight is very, very good. It's very, very quick. They added a lot of dialogue. They added some moments here and there that they usually do for everything. So 7th form. The chills that I got with 7th form. It was like chills on top of chills. First things first, again, I'm gonna call out the OST. Again, it's Zenitsu's theme, right? But they change it a little bit. And there's this bass that's there. You can feel it in your chest. And then he pulls out 7th form. And the coloring of 7th form was stunning. I loved how there was like the blue from Kaigaku along with the gold from Zenitsu in like an ombre type color. And I remember the first time I watched this, I was with my friends and one of my friends is like a big Zenitsu stan and I love him for it. And my first thought when this happened was to look at him. And I looked over at him, and he was in my vlog, and we kind of talked about this in my vlog if you saw that. And he was just like sobbing. And I was like, honestly though, like this is such a huge moment for Zenitsu because he literally just soloed an Upper Moon. Granted, it's Kaigaku. Kaigaku was a loser. He was such a loser that they literally left Upper 5 vacant. They wouldn't even promote him to Upper 5. He had to be Upper 6. So there was no such thing as Upper 5, which is kind of hilarious, honestly. Yeah, it was like a very emotional moment. We also got introduced to Kokushibo again, which Kokushibo has another moment, which we'll talk about later on. And I love Kokushibo, you guys. I'm so sorry to all of you who don't like him. I think he's so cool. I hate him because of what he does, but I love him. I find him so interesting. I find his character design interesting. He's my one hear me out, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I think he's really, really cool. So getting to see him kind of talk to Kaigaku and give him the blood. And also, I don't think it was in the manga, I'll have to check here in a moment, when Kaigaku is like, he has his hands like cupped like this to get the blood, and he's looking at his reflection. There's like one more drop, and then Kaigaku literally sees his demon reflection in the blood before he actually starts drinking it, which I thought was really interesting because I feel like that showed his inner heart was always a selfish demon. And I find that so interesting. Kaigaku's a very interesting character, actually. I wish he had more time because honestly, yeah, the fandom hates him, and rightfully so, because when he disintegrates and Yushido saves Zenitsu, every time I've watched this movie, I've been like, bye! Thanks for nothing! So I definitely, I still find him interesting though, but I hate him. So the voice acting was amazing. The flashbacks for this fight I felt were very, very well layered. Like they never felt like to me like they actually took me out of the fight. Just the same with the third fight as well, which I'll talk about in my next part. But I give the Zenitsu versus Kaigaku fight a 9.5 out of 10. Again, it's more of just a preference thing that I can't give it a 10 out of 10 because while I do love Zenitsu, I feel like these first two fights in this movie are actually the weakest two fights of the entire Infinity Castle and Sunrise Countdown arcs, in my opinion. They're very short, which I will remind everyone. I think narratively, Zenitsu's fight is also supposed to be short because, first of all, he wasn't going to last long because Kaigaku's Blood Demon art was just too much, because his Blood Demon art was the breathing style, and that was crazy. And Yushido was right for being like, you're lucky that you didn't fight him in a year because you would have been killed immediately, because he actually had the potential to be probably on Kokushibo's level because he's a former swordsman. So if you can turn your breathing style into a Blood Demon art, like you are a force to be reckoned with, and you also, that makes it harder for a Demon Slayer to fight you. Because it's like they are just using an enhanced version of what you're doing. But at the same time, it's not lost on me that even though he hadn't mastered that, Zenitsu still ended him. Zenitsu's gotten so strong, and I think Zenitsu just got in touch with that unconscious side of him, and it overlapped for him because of his deep-seated anger for this guy, because of what happened to Gramps, and it's a very emotional moment. And I will be honest with you guys, when Zenitsu kind of is looking at Jigoro across the river, but he can't go there because he's not dying, and Jigoro says, "You're my pride and joy." That's the first time, and I've lost it every time I've watched this movie. I sob because Zenitsu just, the entire time he's been in this story, he just doesn't believe in himself, right? Like that's the main thing. He represents really what most of us would be like. We don't think we're that strong. We're anxious about it. Like we're in a situation that we don't want to be in, so we're scared, and we don't believe in ourselves. And he doesn't even know that he's capable because he keeps having these crazy feats while he's asleep. So he doesn't even know that he's doing all the stuff that we've seen him do as an audience because he's not conscious for it. And for him to get in touch with his conscious side and to find out that he's been developing this seventh form that he wanted to do with Kaigaku. Like it needed to be a teamwork element. Like, it needed to have backup because it was going to use so much of his energy, and he wanted to use it with Kaigaku, and then he uses it on him and beheads him, which is such a huge moment because he just soloed an Upper Moon. The only other person in the story who's done it is Muichiro, and Muichiro is a Hashira. Was just incredible, and it was just so well done in animation. We got a little bit more time with it than we did in the manga, and they just did a fantastic job with it. The voice acting was amazing, the coloring was amazing, the OST. The OST for Kaigaku was very interesting because it kind of had this, like, I think it was like a Japanese traditional instrument that was making the noise, but it had like a twang to it, and it was very good. And then the music when he used his 7th form, I felt in my chest, and it was so good. And it just, oh my gosh, in general, it was amazing. The one thing I will say as a manga reader, there was one moment in the manga that they didn't take out, they just kind of changed it, and I liked it better in the manga. When Zenitsu says, "If I'm scum, then you're trash. I feel sorry for the old man for having such pathetic successors. I can only do the 1st form, and you can do everything except that." Which I think actually in the movie, we got a little bit of more time to kind of digest what he just said. In the manga, it goes straight into Kaigaku using 4th form. But in the anime, when Zenitsu says, "If I'm scum, then you're trash," it's like a wide shot of them just like walking in a circle, kind of talking to each other. In the manga, it's a close-up on his face. And I actually like this better because it feels like a more important moment. I felt like that line held so much more weight in the manga because he's like, if I'm scum, then you're trash. Like, he's just throwing insults at him. And to see his facial expression as he says this, I feel like was way more important than how they placed it in the anime. Like, that was like my one real critique of something they changed. It's not that they took out the dialogue or anything, they just didn't close up on his face as he said that. So it just was kind of more of a moment that just happened rather than the moment in the manga. Like, I remember reading this and being like, whoa, okay, Zenitsu, like, you're locked in. So that's a small critique that made it a 9 instead of a 10 out of 10, because otherwise this fight, they did really, really good. I had so many moments the first time I watched this where I was just like, oh my gosh! Like when he says, "You're too slow, you filth." Okay, so freaking good. But they showed Kokushibo. Oh, there was a translation that I wanted to talk about, because in the manga, again, I felt like it held more weight than in the anime, and I remember seeing some people talk about this on Twitter as well. It's when Kaigaku is taking the blood from Kokushibo, so this little flashback moment, and Kokushibo says, "That is blood to be grateful for. You must not even spill a single drop." Now, in the manga he says, "If you do, your head will fall from your body like tears," which is so poetic. First of all, Kokushibo speaks like an old samurai. He is from a very long ago time, so he speaks slowly, and he uses like old Japanese. So the reason I know this is because I follow a few Japanese people on Twitter, and they were talking about it, and even the line that he said in Japanese, which I can't remember the exact line off the top of my head, is like very like whoa to Japanese. So when they changed it in the movie to just say your head and your torso will be severed, it wasn't so like whoa, right? Which this is more of a translation issue. This isn't an issue with the way they did the movie, because I think the line was exactly the same. It's just a different translator. But man, I wish we got your head will fall from your body like tears. That's what it said. That's so much better than your head and your torso will be severed. Like, that still is like, okay. He's just threatening him, like, if you drop one drop, you're dead. But your head will fall from your body like tears. Oh, that was so good. Which brings me to a side note. I'm glad at least when the characters say Mazui, they changed it back to not good, because in Swordsmith Village, whenever a character said Mazui, the translation we got was oh crap, and it was corny. It was corny as hell. I'm so glad they changed it back to just not good, because that's the more literal translation. They were trying to make it like, I don't know, no one even says oh crap, but like when Tanjiro's watching the demon run away while he's trying to keep his sister from disintegrating in the sun, and he says oh crap, it just takes you out, man. So sometimes the translations are not very good, but it is what it is. This fight sequence was so freaking good. It's quick, but it makes sense that it's fast because Zenitsu really does just outclass him very quickly. And he had to, otherwise he wouldn't have lasted much longer. And also when Yushiro like just pops in, he's just like, someone who never gives to others will someday be unable to receive anything from them, which is so funny. The whole audience laughed every single time. So then when he saves him and Zenitsu sees Gramps, but he can't join him because he's not dying. And this was actually better in the anime translation-wise because in the manga he just says, I'm proud of you. I think him saying, you are my pride and joy, way better. Like, just someone saying, I'm proud of you is still a very special moment, especially for someone like Zenitsu, who is so, like, he doesn't believe in himself, right? And right before that, he's saying, like, don't you hate me? I'm sorry, I couldn't do that. For Gramps to say, you are my pride and joy, to me, as someone who speaks English, like, to me, that would tell me, like, that person is saying, like, you are everything to me. Saying I'm proud of you is just like, okay, thank you. Like when someone says I'm proud of you, it doesn't usually hold as much weight. So I really liked that translation change. So I'm gonna end this part here because my time on my camera right now is 1 hour and 20 minutes. Obviously, whatever this video is when it's released on YouTube will be shorter because I'll cut out some of my like breaks and stuff, but I'm gonna assume I'm not gonna even cut out 20 minutes of it. So this will be over 1 hour. I think talking about the final battle and what ensues is gonna take me over 1 hour. So I'm gonna stop this video here. Part 2 will come out tomorrow. So if you're looking at this video the day it comes out, just keep an eye out for the next one. I'm not gonna make you wait forever. It's just gonna come out tomorrow. And then if you're watching this at a later time, then you probably can just click on the next one. So I'll see you all for part 2 of my review. Okay, bye.